Welcome back, folks. So hopefully at this point you've spent a little bit of time thinking about what are the important questions that need to be asked before you start on a new project development. Right, so that's kind of a bird's eye view. So now let's zoom in a little bit and let's think about the overall process or life cycle of a software project. So I have this graph here, and what this graph has, it has various curves that represent project uncertainty, expense, and revenue, and how they basically change over time. So on the left-hand side, I have basically the beginning of the project, right? So this is where things start. This over here is where things end on the right-hand side. And so we'll go through these one by one. This is actually a very typical graph. Companies always like to kind of use these to illustrate how well a project is going, or maybe how mature their process is to get things done, right, to do development. So I have here uncertainty, expense, and revenue. So let's just start with uncertainty. So what is uncertainty? What this is basically representing is, is this project going to be something that when I complete it and I put it on the market, it'll be profitable, right? It's something that the company actually wants to move forward with. So at the beginning of the day, right, before we build the product, we really don't know if we can even do it, right? We also think in terms of, oh, hey, it's a long ways out. It's really out there, right? It may be years before my product gets to a point where I can actually put it on the market. And things may change in that time, right? Maybe there's a competitor that comes along. They have a product that is better than ours, right? Ours is, all of a sudden something that doesn't sell. Maybe the problem goes away, right? Maybe we tried to address something that isn't really valid anymore. We don't know, right, at the very beginning of this project. And so at that point, uncertainty is very high. And so over time, right, as we kind of move forward the project, as we actually have something tangible, right, as we actually have some artifacts, right, development, uncertainty decreases. And eventually you get to the end of the day where, oh, hey, I've actually completed my project, and so my uncertainty falls to nothing, right? So we kind of have this curve that basically just falls over time, right? We start really high and eventually drop off really low, as we now know that we have something that will make sense in the current market. So that's one thing people like. Maybe you can think to yourself, oh, hey, what does the ideal uncertainty curve look like? Or maybe it's obvious, right? The lower uncertainty, the better, right? We want to know that we're building something that is actually useful in terms of the company. Okay, so the other curve we have here is expense rate. So expense rate is basically cost, right? What is it that we have to expend on this project? So initially it's pretty low because it's cost for things like initial design, right, or market analysis. It's not all this large, right? We can basically spin up a project with just a few people, right? Relatively speaking. Later on, we get kind of into hardcore development mode, right? Actually crunching through this thing and building up a product. That's when our expense rate goes up, right? And that's actually what this kind of middle part is representing here. And you'll notice here that this curve is a little bit different than the other curve. It's not so smooth. There's really kind of two dividing things here, right? So this is maybe our project ramp up, right, initially happens over here as we try to hire more people. We get kind of to a fixed state where everybody that we need is around. They work for some amount of time, and then eventually the project begins to wind down, and we start getting rid of people or moving people to other projects. So this is kind of the general flow of the expense rate in a project. To give a little bit of terms, right, to put some names on these different regions of the graph here. This middle region is maybe we call the development region. I'm going to try and write this here. I know my writing is not too good. So this is development. I won't bother running the whole thing. So kind of the middle part of this graph is development, right? When we actually build out the product. For the thing we first started talking about when we talked about, oh, hey, uncertainty is really high at the beginning. This initial part is basically going to be inception. So when we are initially kind of putting together a product, right? Trying to see what it is we can do. So this is inception. Again, I'm not going to write the whole thing because it'll be here forever. So there's kind of these different regions, right? And based on these different regions, right, the different things that are happening in my project, well, my little curves are going to look a little bit different, right? I'm going to have more expenses when I'm building a thing than when I'm just creating the project for the first time. I'm also, if I'm in inception, right, I have a lot of uncertainty until I actually get to development. I start to pin things down, right? I finally decide to say, put my foot down and say, we're going to use this piece of technology to accomplish this. Okay, so then the other line we have here is the revenue line, or revenue curve. So what this is representing, this is now the green one at the bottom, is what we really want at the end of the day, right? So this is going to be our profit. Initially, we have our revenue. Initially, we have basically nothing, right? We have just an idea. We don't have anything we can take to a customer and actually sell and get money for. So we start off low. And now as we kind of ramp up, right, we get past inception, past development, right, and starting without development, then we get to something that can actually generate revenue, right? So maybe this is something that we can start offering to people and saying, okay, for this amount, right, we can sell your license to it or whatever. Right, initially you have nothing to sell, but eventually you have something to at least demo, right, something to maybe get, generate interest, right, generate potential contracts. And then eventually, right, your software is done, and you have something that you can actually really put on the market. So this over here is maybe what we call the deployment area of the graph. So let's just write that again there, deploy, yeah, I can't write very well. So we have these kind of three general regions, right? And you can see how these lines all kind of differ, right? All these curves differ. So over in our deployment phase at the far right, that's when we start to get revenue. Development is wound down, and our uncertainty, right, has finally been reduced because we actually have something there, right? There's no kind of choices left to make, right? There's no changes externally that could happen that could affect us. So these are kind of the three different metrics we sometimes use to follow a product. There are kind of different ways this graph could look. This is maybe for a typical software project, but something that's going particularly well will look a different way. Something that's going particularly bad will look another way. Maybe you can picture something bad would be what happens if that revenue curve was like high for the entire duration of the product. Right? Maybe you have to redo the entire thing every week, and you started before you really should have. Right? That would be an issue. So what I would suggest is you may spend a little bit of time thinking about these graphs, and basically what would be the best, what would be the worst. All right, let's go on to our next thing. So next thing I want to talk about is the different roles in the company of people who might have something to do with your product development. The first thing we have is the CEO, right? And they're basically in charge of the company vision and meeting the goals that are set by probably some board of executives. All right, the three I really want to focus on here are the ones at the bottom, which is basically the CTO, VP of Marketing, VP of Engineering. So, CTO, basically their job is going to be, well, it can kind of vary. Different companies will have kind of different definitions for this role. This is typically someone, right, that has some technical background, although they're not in engineering per se. Their ultimately overall goal is going to be to try and reduce uncertainty or risk in a project. So if you think back to that curve, we want that curve to fall as quickly as possible. The CTO hopefully can help to address that, right? So maybe seeing if there is something on the horizon that affects our product, right? Or some of the technology that it's built on, is that really not what we should be using? They're also useful, the CTOs will also work in terms of basically strategic planning, right? So short-term, long-term, right? Are we doing what we should be doing, right? Is there something better that we can be doing? Are we utilizing the technologies that are available? Are we offering technology that's useful to other people? Okay, so that's the CTO. Then we also have somebody like the Vice President of Engineering, right? The VP of Engineering. So at the end of the day, their job, right, is not so much strategic planning. It's not so much maybe brainstorming would be another thing, maybe that, or coming up with creative ideas, right, would be another thing maybe that the CTO does. Really, at the end of the day, the job of the VP of Engineering is to make sure things get done, right? So really overseeing the software development process, right, and trying actually to push out some result at the end of the day. Their job, right, unlike the CTO, is really to reduce the overall expense rate. So we don't want to be costing the company all this money, right, because you have to hire engineers to redo this thing every other week, right? We don't want that, right? We want to have a smooth development process that goes well, right, where we don't have a lot of rework, we don't have a lot of excess expenditures. So that's one thing that the VP of Engineering is going to look at. Last thing we have here on this slide is the VP of Marketing. So VP of Marketing, basically their job is to track the market, right? What is out there? What is happening? What are people interested in? How can we position our product? In terms of that chart on the previous slide, they're concerned with a couple things. Obviously, they're going to be concerned with revenue, right? So it's their job to actually make that part of the graph go up, right? It's their job to push out product. They're actually also involved in the uncertainty, the curve that we had, right? Because they're also supposed to be looking at the market and maybe get a sense for, oh, is the thing that we're building, right? Is the product we're creating something that people will actually want, right? Or is it something that will be not really interesting, right, in a year from now, or maybe there'll be a competitor that beats us to the market, and again, it's going to be something we can't really make any revenue with. It's their job to take a look at those things. So really, what kind of goes together is they reduce uncertainty. At the same time, that kind of implies that you're increasing revenue as well. Okay, so just to kind of overall give you guys a flavor for these three roles, here are some catchphrases or common quotes that maybe you'd hear from these different people. So CTO, how can we make the impossible possible, right? So their job, right, is looking at technology, saying, what can we build, right? What might be a market we want to get into? What is something that's feasible? VP of Engineering, right? So they're saying, oh, time is money, full speed ahead, right? They're trying to just build what it is that needs to get done. Lastly, we have there for marketing, what is the next big thing, right? They're trying to reduce that uncertainty. They're trying to predict, right, what is going to be the next thing, right? So maybe VP of Marketing works with the CTO to make that happen. before handing something over to the VP of Engineering. Okay, so for some discussion here, I have a couple of questions for you guys to think about, and then bring to one of the live discussions, or if you can't make it to those, to do the write-up on it instead. So the first question is, what is the best shape for the expense rate curve? Think about that for a little bit, and think about the other curves as well, what they could look like, what would be good or bad for them, just for your own sake. This is the only thing I really want to discuss here. And the second one over here is, which of the executive roles would you least expect to find in an early stage technology startup company? Explain. So maybe you can think to yourself also, these different roles, right? These different roles, even though we kind of explain all three of them here, not all companies have these, right? So companies at different levels of development, different levels of maturity may or may not have these particular roles. So just think about that a little bit. When do I actually need people to wear these hats, right? Maybe I have companies where there's somebody that wears multiple hats. So spend a little bit of time thinking about that, and we'll discuss it later on.